The courtroom fell into stunned silence as 83-year-old Janice Combs, the mother of Sean Diddy Combs, was unexpectedly called to the witness stand. It was a moment no one saw coming. Up until then, the federal trial in Manhattan had played out with a sense of routine, quiet whispers, lawyers exchanging notes, and Diddy himself appearing composed, even occasionally flashing a smile to supporters in the gallery. But the second the prosecution announced her name, the energy in the room shifted completely. As Janice made her slow, deliberate walk to the front of the courtroom, gasps echoed through the gallery. Even the judge seemed momentarily stunned. Diddy's legal team exchanged concerned glances. The man who had once exuded confidence now looked visibly shaken. If you're new here, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. We bring you the most in-depth and factual coverage of major celebrity cases. No fluff, no spin. Janice Combs had always stood by her son, through every scandal, every success. Her appearance as a prosecution witness was shocking not just for its emotional weight, but for what it signified. Something serious had changed. As she took the oath and settled into the witness chair, Diddy no longer looked like the powerful mogul. He looked like a son facing a truth he wasn't ready for. There had been no warning, no public hint she would testify. The moment she began speaking, the courtroom held its breath. Her voice was steady, her tone sincere. She spoke of late-night conversations with her son, her growing concerns over the years, and the difficult realization that she could no longer turn a blind eye. It wasn't just testimony, it was a mother's reckoning. The courtroom, packed with press and spectators, was frozen. Reporters paused their typing, sketch artists lowered their pencils, and no one moved. Diddy sat frozen, paper in hand, his fingers no longer turning pages. The prosecution had scored a powerful move. Not with surprise witnesses from Diddy's past, but with the one person he likely never imagined would stand against him. When the defense quickly objected, claiming family privilege, the prosecution countered, conversations between an adult and his mother, especially about criminal allegations, aren't legally protected. The judge agreed. Janice was allowed to proceed. Her gaze remained fixed on the prosecutor, rarely flickering toward her son. Her quiet composure was striking. This wasn't a performance. It was personal. She spoke not as a woman with second-hand knowledge, but as someone who had lived through the rise of Sean Combs and had watched him become someone she no longer recognized. Her words didn't come from tabloids or headlines. They came from experience. And in that courtroom, they landed with the weight of a bombshell. This was no longer just about the charges. It was about legacy, about truth, about a mother deciding to speak, no matter the cost. Stay tuned. This trial is far from over. I've been asked to testify about conversations I've had with my son over the years and about behaviors I've witnessed that deeply concerned me, Janice Combs began, her voice steady but somber. I'm here because I believe the truth needs to be told, no matter how painful. A hushed murmur rippled through the courtroom. Diddy shifted in his seat, tugging at his sleeve and pulling down his lead attorney as if to stop what was already in motion. It was clear he had braced himself for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare him for what was about to unfold. Because of Janice's age and the emotional weight of her testimony, the prosecution moved gently. Mrs. Combs, the prosecutor, began, "Could you please tell the court about your relationship with your son?" Janice took a deep breath. What followed would mark a turning point in one of the most high-profile trials in recent history. I raised Sean as a single mother, after his father was murdered when he was just a child, she said. I worked multiple jobs to give him a chance at a life I never had. I wanted him to be strong, successful, to make something of himself. And he did. He exceeded every dream I ever had for him. Her voice softened as she recalled the joy of watching her son rise, from a young intern with big dreams to a powerful music mogul, performer, entrepreneur, and multimillionaire. Sean was always charismatic, she smiled faintly. Even as a little boy, he could convince anyone of anything. He had that gift. The jurors leaned in. But then her tone shifted. Somewhere along the way, something changed, she said. She spoke of how fame consumed him. Success came fast. Suddenly everyone was saying yes to him. Everyone treated him like he was above the rules. And I started to see him believe it. The prosecutor carefully guided her through memories from Diddy's early 2000s peak, memories tinged with concern. I started noticing things, the way he controlled people around him, his temper, his disregard for boundaries. Her voice grew firmer. At first, I blamed the pressure. This industry can be brutal. But then I started seeing things I couldn't ignore. She recalled. Visits to his homes. Young women who seemed dazed. Staff who looked afraid. Rooms I wasn't allowed to enter. One memory from 2008 stood out. I arrived unannounced at his Miami home. Mothers can do that, she said, prompting nervous laughter from the gallery. There had been a party the night before, but the cleanup didn't feel right. People were collecting phones. A young woman was crying while a security guard escorted her out. Sean was furious I showed up without warning. The prosecution then presented a photograph. "Do you recognize this location?" they asked. She nodded. "That's the pool house at his Los Angeles home. He turned it into what he called a studio around 2010. But he was secretive about it. I wasn't allowed inside, which was strange. I'd always been welcome everywhere else." Her worries grew. And she tried to talk to him. I asked questions. He'd brush me off. Told me I didn't understand his world. Said everything was consensual. Just part of the industry lifestyle. Then came a pivotal question from the prosecution. "Did your son ever discuss with you the allegations made against him by women?" Janice nodded slowly. "Yes. When the first accusations came out publicly around 2017, I called him right away. I asked him directly. He said they were lies, that they wanted money, that this happened to all successful men." She paused, her voice weighed down. "I believed him. I wanted to believe him. He was my son." "And did something change that belief?" the prosecutor asked. Janice's eyes dropped. "Yes." The courtroom held its breath. In late 2023, after Cassie filed her lawsuit, I confronted him again. We were alone in his New York apartment. I told him I didn't want the media version, or his lawyer's version. I wanted the truth, from a son to his mother. Her voice wavered for the first time. He looked different that day. Tired, worn down, like the mask had slipped. He didn't confess everything, but he said something I'll never forget. She exhaled, and with visible pain, repeated the words, "Mom, you don't build what I've built by playing by everyone else's rules. Sometimes people get hurt. That's business." A stunned silence fell over the room. Jurors sat frozen. Even the court stenographer briefly stopped typing. And Diddy, now pale and still, stared at the floor. For the first time, the man who had once controlled every room, every narrative, was completely silent. This wasn't just damning testimony. This was a mother's heartbreak, and it may have just changed everything. "That's not how I raised him. That's not business. That's not right." Janice Combs's words echoed across the courtroom like a crack of thunder. Diddy remained motionless, staring blankly at the polished wood of the defense table. His attorneys scribbled furiously, whispering to each other in hushed, frantic tones, but he seemed far away, unreachable, like a man already halfway outside the walls of his own empire. Janice didn't falter. She continued, her voice growing, more firm, more resolute. "My fears deepened in early 2024, when that security footage emerged. The video of my son beating Cassie in that hotel hallway." She paused. Her face trembled with the weight of the memory. "I called him immediately after watching it. Devastated, doesn't begin to describe what I felt. I asked him, "How could you do this?" And he told me, it was a difficult time in their relationship, that I was only seeing one moment, taken out of context, that he wasn't that person anymore. The prosecutor asked gently, "Did you believe him?" "No." Her answer was immediate, cold, final. "Not anymore." She looked out toward the jury. "Because I've seen that rage before. Not toward me, but toward others. Staff, business, partners, assistants. That man in that video? He wasn't a stranger to me." And that realization broke my heart. There was silence in the courtroom. Janice Combs was not just testifying. She was unraveling decades of loyalty and denial in real time. I began noticing more. In early 2024, during a visit to his home office, I saw a list on his desk. Names of women, notes beside them, handled, potential problem. I asked him what it meant. He grabbed the paper, told me it was just business, something I shouldn't worry about. She hesitated, but the look in his eyes, I knew. A mother knows when her child is hiding something. The prosecutor stepped forward with a document. "Mrs. Combs, I'm now showing you what has been marked as Government Exhibit 42. Do you recognize this?" Janice studied the page, then gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Yes, these are my own notes. Can you explain?" After that visit, I started keeping records of conversations, things I'd witnessed, moments that disturbed me. I was scared. I was losing perspective. That my love for him was clouding my judgment. Writing it down helped me see it. "And what did you see?" Her voice wavered. "A pattern. A terrible pattern. And what I saw terrified me." For the first time since she took the stand, Diddy looked up. Their eyes met. A lifetime passed in a few seconds, a mother and son sharing a silent, anguished reckoning. Then Janice turned back to the prosecutor. "I love my son. That will never change. But I cannot lie for him. I cannot be silent anymore. Too many people have been hurt." The courtroom was stone still. The prosecutor proceeded carefully. "Mrs. Combs, I want to ask you about a conversation you had with your son in April, after his arrest. But before this trial began. Can you describe that meeting?" Janice sat up straighter, preparing herself. "Yes, I visited him in the detention center. Just the two of us. They made special arrangements because of who he is." Her tone was calm but strained. "I told him I needed the truth. The real truth. Before I could stand behind him publicly, I had to know what I was standing behind." She took a breath, the weight of the moment settling in. He was quiet at first. Then he said, "The truth? The truth is, I built a world where I made the rules, where what I wanted happened, where people either played along or got pushed aside. Was it always right? No. Did people get hurt? Yes, but that's, how power works, Ma. That's how it's always worked." A murmur rippled across the courtroom. The jurors were spellbound. Even Diddy's lawyers looked uneasy now. Less like defenders, more like men trapped in a crumbling fortress. "I asked him directly," Janice continued, "about the allegations, the parties, the recordings, the threats, the drugs. I told him I needed to hear him deny it. If it wasn't true, he had to say so." "And did he deny it?" the prosecutor asked softly. Janice didn't flinch. "No." Her hands trembled slightly on the witness stand. He said, "It's complicated. Everything was consensual at the beginning. No one was forced, but once you're in that world, the lines blur. People change their minds later. But by then, they'd already taken the money, the opportunities. They'd already benefited." A stunned silence took hold once. "Again," I told him, she added, "that consent given under pressure, fear, intoxication, isn't consent." Her voice cracked, and he said, "That's not how it works in my world. The lead defense attorney passed a note to Diddy, who barely glanced at it. The prosecutor gave Janice a moment before, asking, "Mrs. Combs, did your son ever explicitly admit to the criminal conduct he's charged with?" She stared straight ahead. "Not in those words. But he told me enough. Enough to know the truth." She turned to the jury now, her voice crystal clear. He said, "The system I built worked. Everyone got what they wanted. It only became a problem when people decided to change the rules." She paused, letting that land. "I raised my son to take responsibility for his actions, to treat people with dignity. And when he said that, I knew he had lost his way. He wasn't seeing people anymore, only pieces in a game he thought he controlled." The prosecutor presented one final exhibit, a letter Janice had written to her son after that meeting. In it, she reaffirmed her love, but made it clear she could no longer defend him. "Not after everything." "Did you receive a response?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes," she said, her voice softer now. "He called me. He was angry, then pleading. Said I didn't understand what was at stake, that everything he'd built was on the line." She looked up, her eyes red but unwavering. "And I told him, that's exactly why I had to speak the truth. Because lives are on the line, not just his." The courtroom held its breath as the prosecutor posed the final, critical question. "Mrs. Combs, what brought you here today? Why did you agree to testify in this case?" The silence that followed was almost sacred, like the hush before a confession. Janice Combs didn't answer immediately. Her eyes, once soft with maternal sorrow, now burned with something sharper. Conviction. Because the truth matters. Her voice was steady. Because accountability matters. Because I raised my son to be better than this. She paused, her gaze shifting to where her son sat, head down, the shadow of his former self. And because I believe that real love, a mother's love, isn't about shielding your child from consequences. It's about standing by them while they face those consequences and urging them to become better, not letting them become worse. Her voice cracked. Not from weakness, but from strength restrained. "I'm here because I love my son enough to tell the truth about him, even when that truth breaks my heart. I'm here because the women who were hurt deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be believed. And I'm here because Sean needs to understand. No amount of money, fame, or power puts you above basic human decency." At that moment, something visibly shifted in Diddy. The armor cracked. The posturing fell away. His shoulders slumped. His jaw loosened. The ever-controlled, ever-commanding music mogul suddenly looked very small, like a boy again, seated in front of the one judgment he feared most, his mother's. The prosecutor thanked Mrs. Combs. With composure intact, Janice stepped down from the stand and made her way back to her seat. She did not flinch as she passed the defense table, her dignity unbroken, her footsteps deliberate. Diddy watched her walk past, and his eyes followed her like a man watching the last bridge behind him go up in flames. Cross-examination. The defense attorney rose with noticeable caution. His demeanor was uncharacteristically gentle, almost deferential. He didn't challenge her motives. He didn't question her love. Instead, he asked questions that leaned into technicalities. Her distance from the events, the fact that much of what she knew was based on conversations, not direct observation. Janice answered without defensiveness. She acknowledged what she didn't know, but reaffirmed what she did. "I may not have seen every act, but I saw the man. I saw what he became. I heard what he told me when no one else was listening." Her composure never broke. And as she was finally excused from the stand, she offered one last glance toward her son, not of bitterness, but of profound aching disappointment. It was a look that said, "You can still make this right, but not by running." And then she was gone. Expert testimony. Dr. Margaret Chen. After a short recess, the The prosecution called its next witness, Dr. Margaret Chen, a renowned family psychologist who has worked extensively on high-profile celebrity and political cases. Once her credentials were established, the prosecutor cut straight to the point. Dr. Chen, could you help the court understand the significance of Mrs. Combs's testimony? Dr. Chen leaned forward, her tone both clinical and reverent. What we saw today was extraordinary, she began. In cases involving powerful public figures, it is rare, extremely rare, for family members, especially parents, to testify in a way that could damage the defendant's image. Most either stay silent or offer unconditional support, regardless of the evidence. What Mrs. Combs did today represents what we in psychology call a moral tipping point. The courtroom listened, riveted. It's the moment when the psychological discomfort, what we call cognitive dissonance, between loving a person and witnessing the harm they've caused becomes unsustainable. She didn't experience a sudden change of heart. She described a gradual awakening. That adds credibility. It means she wrestled with this decision, repeatedly, before choosing to speak out. The prosecutor nodded. And what about her son's behavior, as she described it? Dr. Chen didn't hesitate. What she described are classic signs of power insulation. It's a psychological phenomenon where individuals who acquire extreme wealth, fame, or influence gradually become surrounded by enablers, people who reinforce the belief that they are exceptional, above reproach. This creates a distorted sense of reality, where accountability fades. Could his statements to his mother reflect this? The prosecutor asked. Dr. Chen nodded. Absolutely. His claim that everyone got what they wanted, that the rules only became a problem when people changed them. This reflects a worldview shaped by years of unchecked power. The fact that he no longer recognized coercion, manipulation, or pressure as violations of consent indicates how far removed he became from societal norms. And a mother's role in that dynamic? Uniquely powerful, Dr. Chen replied. A mother is often the last person who can break through that insulation, because she knew the person before the power, before the entourage, before the image, and when even that connection frays, it's a sign that the person is now a danger to others and to themselves. The courtroom sat in heavy reflective silence. The jury was no longer just assessing evidence. They were watching the anatomy of moral collapse, of a son fallen and a mother choosing truth over loyalty. And in the end, what echoed loudest wasn't what was said. It was what was no longer denied.